The check was already in the mail when Caitlin Clark's phone rang with news that would shatter her heart and reveal a connection so profound it would change everything she thought she knew about the power of giving back to the place that made her who she was. How do you process the moment when you discover that a simple act of charity has become the lifeline for the very community center where you once learned to dream, where your own family had relied on free meals during their darkest hour? What unfolded wasn't just about celebrity donations or feel-good philanthropy. It was about the instant a superstar athlete realized her success had come full circle to save the exact place that had once saved her family 20 years earlier. Few knew that the West Des Moines Community Food Pantry, to which Caitlin had quietly donated $50,000, was the same place her mother had taken her as a child when their family struggled to put food on the table. The revelation of this hidden connection transformed a simple donation into one of the most meaningful moments of her career. Before diving into the full story, the question remained: who could have imagined such a powerful twist of fate? On that October morning, the autumn leaves crunched beneath Caitlin's feet as she walked the familiar streets of West Des Moines. The crisp Iowa air carried the scent of burning leaves and the faint aroma of apple cider drifting from the farmer's market a few blocks away. She had returned home for a brief visit between games, seeking comfort in the surroundings that shaped her long before the world knew her name. And then her phone buzzed. Caitlin Clark's day took a turn she could never have anticipated when she received a text from her foundation's director, Sarah Martinez. A simple message that would set in motion a chain of events, leaving her questioning everything she thought she knew about fate, gratitude, and the invisible threads that connect our past to our purpose. The message read: "The West Des Moines Community Food Pantry is about to close permanently. They're 3 months behind on rent and can't afford to keep their doors open. Hundreds of families will lose their primary source of food assistance. Can we help?" Caitlin stopped in her tracks, her breath visible in the cool morning air as she stared at the address included in the message: Maple Street Community Center. The name struck her like a physical blow, though she couldn't immediately explain why. It felt familiar, important, as though a buried childhood memory was fighting to the surface. Without hesitation, she called Sarah back and said, "Send them $50,000 immediately. Whatever they need to stay open, make it happen. And Sarah, I want to visit them personally today." What Caitlin didn't realize was that this decision would unlock a secret her mother had kept hidden for more than 2 decades. A secret that revealed the true foundation of everything she had become. 2 hours later, she stood outside the modest brick building on Maple Street, its faded sign reading Community Food Pantry. "All are welcome," the words repainted countless times over the years. The scent of fresh bread and canned goods drifted from the open doors, blending with the voices of volunteers organizing donations and the quiet chatter of families receiving assistance. Margaret Thompson, the pantry's 70-year-old director, greeted Caitlin with tearful eyes and trembling hands. "Miss Clark, I can't believe you're here," she said, her voice heavy with emotion. "Your donation, it saved us. We were going to have to close next week, and now we can stay open for another year at least." As Margaret led her through the facility, pointing out the shelves of food, the small corner where children could do homework while their parents shopped, and the community bulletin board filled with thank you notes, Caitlin was overcome by an uncanny sense of déjà vu. Everything about the place felt familiar, from the layout of the rooms to the smell of the industrial carpet to the way the afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows. "Mrs. Thompson," Caitlin said, stopping in front of a wall covered with photos spanning decades of the pantry's service to the community. "How long has this place been operating?" Margaret Thompson smiled proudly. "Oh, we've been here for 35 years. Started in the basement of the Methodist church down the street, but we moved here in the late 90s. We've helped thousands of families over the years, especially during tough economic times." Caitlin's eyes scanned the photographs, searching for something she couldn't quite name, when suddenly her breath caught in her throat. There, in a faded color photograph from the early 2000s, was a familiar face. A young woman with tired eyes and a grateful smile holding the hand of a small girl with pigtails and a basketball tucked under her arm. It was her mother, and the little girl was her. "Mrs. Thompson," Caitlin whispered, barely able to speak. "That photo, the woman with the little girl, when was that taken?" Margaret adjusted her glasses, leaning closer. "Oh my, that must be from around 2003 or 2004. We used to take pictures during our holiday distributions. That little girl was so sweet, always had a basketball with her. Her mother was going through a difficult time. I remember, single mom, working multiple jobs, just trying to make ends meet. The room began to spin as the weight of the revelation crashed over Caitlin. She was staring at a photograph of herself and her mother from 20 years ago, taken during a time she had buried deep in her memory. The food pantry she had just saved was the very place that had once saved her family. Trembling, she pulled out her phone. "I need to call my mother," she said, dialing quickly. And Clark answered on the second ring, her voice warm and steady. "Hi, sweetheart. How's your visit home going?" "Mom," Caitlin said, her voice breaking. "I'm standing in the Maple Street Community Food Pantry, looking at a picture of us from when I was little. Why didn't you ever tell me we came here?" Silence stretched on the line before and finally spoke, her voice heavy with tears. "Oh, honey, I was hoping you wouldn't remember. You were so young, and I was so ashamed. Your father had been laid off, and I was working 2 part-time jobs that barely covered rent. There were weeks we didn't have enough money for groceries." Caitlin sank into a chair as the hidden history settled over her. "Mom, how long did we come here?" "About 6 months," and whispered. "Mrs. Thompson and the volunteers were angels. They never made us feel ashamed or different. They treated us with dignity and kindness. You loved coming here because they had a play area where you could dribble your basketball while I shopped." Suddenly, her childhood began to rearrange itself. This center, the place where she had dreamed, was also where her family had once sought help. "Mrs. Thompson," Caitlin called, her voice steadier now. "That little girl in the photo with the basketball, that was me. My family came here 20 years ago, and I never knew it until now." Margaret's eyes widened with recognition. "Oh my goodness, little Caitlin. I remember you. You never went anywhere without that basketball. Your mother was such a lovely woman, working so hard for you." The embrace that followed transcended time, connecting past and present in a surge of gratitude. "You know what this means, don't you?" Caitlin said, looking Margaret in the eyes. "My success, all of it, started here. This place didn't just feed me when I was hungry. It fed my dreams when I needed hope." What happened next proved that some circles are meant to be completed. In the weeks that followed, Caitlin poured herself into transforming the pantry. She created the Full Circle Fund, an endowment ensuring it would never face closure again, launched a scholarship program for children of pantry families, and built a Dream Corner, a space with books, games, and basketballs where kids could play and study while their parents shopped. At the grand reopening, hundreds gathered, but for Caitlin, the most important moment came when she stood in the same spot where that photo had been taken 20 years earlier. Not as a child in need, but as a woman giving back. 20 years ago, I stood here as a little girl who didn't understand why we were here, but who felt the love and dignity this place gave my family, she told the crowd. Today, I stand here knowing that success isn't just about what you achieve for yourself. It's about how you use it to lift up the people and places that lifted you first. This place taught me that asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It taught me community isn't just for the good times, but for the hard ones. And it taught me that the most important investments we make are in the dignity and dreams of our neighbors. The ovation that followed was heartfelt, but the most powerful moment came afterward, when a young mother approached Caitlin with her 6-year-old daughter, clutching a small basketball. "Miss Clark," the woman said, her voice carrying the same gratitude Caitlin once heard in her own mother's. "My daughter wants to be just like you someday. She practices basketball every day in our apartment parking lot." Caitlin knelt to the girl's level, looking into eyes filled with the same determination she had carried at that age. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Isabella," the girl replied shyly. "I want to play basketball like you, but Mommy says we can't afford lessons." Caitlin smiled warmly, her voice gentle yet filled with conviction. "Isabella, I want you to remember something very important. This place, these people, they're not just helping you and your mom with food, they're investing in your dreams. And someday, when you're grown up and successful, you'll look back on this moment and find a way to help other little girls with big dreams who just need someone to believe in them." She signed the girl's basketball and wrote a message. "Dream big, work hard, and never forget where you came from. The world is waiting for what you have to offer." As the ceremony ended and families left with groceries and renewed hope, Caitlin remained in the pantry with Margaret, both women reflecting on the journey that had brought them together. "You know what the most beautiful part of this is?" Margaret asked softly. "What's that, Mrs. Thompson?" Caitlin replied. Margaret's eyes glistened as she said, 20 years ago, we fed a little girl's body and nurtured her dreams. Today, that little girl came back and fed our community's future. That's not charity, honey. That's the miracle of what happens when love comes full circle. Driving home that evening, Caitlin felt a profound understanding of how the universe works in mysterious ways. How seeds of generosity planted in dark times can bloom into forests of hope decades later. The pantry that had once sustained her family had now become the place where she could sustain her community's future. What began as a $50,000 donation had grown into a $1 million commitment. But more importantly, it had become a model of how true success is measured not by what you keep, but by how you honor the people and places that made your journey possible. And that night, as little Isabella drifted to sleep clutching her signed basketball and dreaming of one day playing before thousands of cheering fans, she carried the same spark of hope that had once kept a young Caitlin Clark going. Proof that some gifts are meant to be passed forward, generation after generation, until the world finally understands that we rise by lifting others and find our true purpose by honoring the places that first believed in us. Because the greatest victories don't always happen under bright lights or on championship courts, but in quiet food pantries and community centers, where the real game is played every day. Feeding not just bodies, but dreams, and ensuring the circle of hope is never broken.